the signal no one expected. The Elendari did not believe in miracles. They believed in mathematics, harmony, and balance, in the gentle equilibrium that governed their oceans, their sky cities, and their quiet place in the spiral of the galaxy. War was an abstract concept to them, a distant phenomenon studied in history archives and diplomatic simulations. That illusion ended the moment their outer colonies went silent. At first, the disappearances were subtle. A mining station failed to report its routine shipment logs. A relay beacon stopped transmitting. A deep space observatory blinked out without warning. Then came the debris. Fragments of ships drifted into trade lanes, twisted metal fused by unimaginable heat. Entire stations reduced to dust. No distress calls, no escape pods, only silence. The Velker Dominion had arrived. Their war doctrine was terrifying in its simplicity. Strike fast, strike hard, and leave nothing capable of resistance. Their fleets descended upon Elendari systems like a cosmic storm, blotting out stars with angular, obsidian hulls that seemed to absorb light itself. Orbital defenses collapsed in minutes. Civilian transports were vaporized before they could flee. Entire cities fell beneath precision bombardments that turned crystal towers into glowing ash. The Elendari sent pleas to the Galactic Council. The response came swiftly, and it was not help. It was caution. The Council feared escalation. The Velker Dominion was too powerful, too unpredictable. Intervention could ignite a war that would consume entire sectors. The Elendari were advised to negotiate, to surrender if necessary. But the Dominion did not negotiate. They harvested. Their ships encircled the Elendari homeworld, tightening a silent noose in orbit. Planetary shields faltered under sustained assault. Atmospheric fires began to spread across continents as defense grids failed one by one. Extinction was no longer a possibility. It was a timeline. In desperation, the Elendari did something unprecedented. They broadcast a blind distress call. Not to allies, not to the Council, to everyone. The signal carried no demands, no politics, only truth. We are dying. If anyone hears this, remember us. The message spread through trade networks, private relays, forgotten listening posts, and abandoned military channels. Most who received it did nothing. Some mourned. Others archived it as another casualty of the Dominion's expansion. But the signal did not stop traveling. It passed through dead zones and solar interference, bouncing across ancient communication arrays older than many civilizations. And eventually, it reached Sol, deep beneath the lunar surface, far below civilian settlements and research colonies. Something stirred. The lunar strategic vault had been sealed for nearly a century, a relic of humanity's darker age, when survival demanded preparedness rather than trust. The distress signal triggered a system long thought obsolete. Emergency protocol. External civilian extinction event. For 0.3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the vault woke up. Power surged through dormant reactors. Ancient defense networks blinked online. Encrypted channels opened across Earth, Mars, and the orbital shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt. On Earth, governments received the same message simultaneously. Distress signal verified. Hostile extermination event confirmed. Response authorization requested. Within minutes, debates erupted across leadership councils. Humanity had changed. The wars that once scarred their history were over. The galaxy knew them as traders, engineers, explorers, a species striving for peace. Intervention meant revealing what had been hidden, what had been buried, what had been promised never to be used again. But as Elendari transmissions continued to arrive, weaker now, fragmented by orbital interference, hesitation began to fracture. One message slipped through intact. A child's voice. Soft. Terrified. Is anyone coming? Silence followed. Then, on Luna, authorization was granted. The vault did not celebrate. It executed. Across the solar system, sealed facilities opened. Asteroid mining platforms shifted, revealing weapon mounts beneath industrial exteriors. Oceanic research stations descended into deeper layers, uncovering launch bays long disguised as scientific structures. In orbit, derelict-looking stations powered on, their skeletal frames unfolding into something far more dangerous. Shipyards, once believed abandoned, ignited with activity. Construction arms moved. Docking clamps released. Vessels emerged. Not sleek exploration cruisers. Not diplomatic envoys. Warships. Humanity had not dismantled its capacity for violence. It had hidden it, stored it, waited, because humans understood something the galaxy did not. Peace was not permanent. Peace was protected. As the first of the Terran strategic fleet powered up, observers across the solar system noticed a change in the night sky. New stars appeared, moving once. Engines burned with controlled fury as massive vessels aligned toward jump coordinates. And for the first time in generations, Earth prepared for war. No declaration was made. No announcement broadcast. Only a single reply was transmitted back along the Elandari distress frequency. Short, simple, and unmistakably human. You are heard. Moments later, the first fleet vanished into the dark between stars. The sleeping giant had awakened. The giant stirs. The galaxy noticed before it understood. Across trade corridors and long-range observatories, something shifted near the quiet yellow star known as Sol. Traffic patterns changed. Signal density spiked. Old gravitational shadows, once dismissed as debris clusters or dormant infrastructure, began to move with purpose. The Galactic Council watched with growing unease as humanity's system, long considered stable and passive, transformed overnight into something active. At first, analysts assumed it was a defensive maneuver. Perhaps the distress signal from the Elandari had triggered humanitarian preparations. Medical fleets, evacuation convoys, supply transports. That assumption died when the first ship emerged from the asteroid belt. It was not a relief vessel. It was enormous, angular, armored, and unmistakably built for violence. Long hidden beneath the guise of mining platforms, entire shipyards had come alive. Asteroids split open like metallic fruit, revealing internal docks and construction lattices that had remained dormant for decades. From them came warships, not polished or ceremonial, functional, brutal, purpose-built. The Council's strategic monitors struggled to categorize them. Their silhouettes didn't match any known fleet doctrine. They weren't symmetrical enough for traditional balance. They carried too much armor for speed, too many weapon hardpoints for patrol, too many redundancies for exploration. It was as if they had been designed to survive the worst possible battlefield, and then keep fighting anyway. Humanity's response was not improvisation. It was activation. Across Luna, Mars, and the outer colonies, long-buried command networks synchronized. Old treaties were unlocked. Defense pacts, sealed in the aftermath of humanity's last internal conflicts, resurfaced with startling clarity. The Terran Strategic Reserve Fleet was coming online, and it was vast. Massive siege carriers rose from beneath the Martian crust, their hulls scarred from stress testing in environments more hostile than space itself. Kinetic lance platforms unfolded from disguised solar arrays, revealing long spinal weapons capable of accelerating solid tungsten rods to relativistic speeds. Drone foundries began releasing adaptive combat swarms, machines designed not just to fight, but to learn. This was not a fleet built for dominance. It was built for survival in impossible conditions. Deathworlder philosophy shaped every aspect of human war doctrine. Earth had not been a gentle teacher. Its gravity strained bone and muscle. Its storms reshaped continents. Its predators hunted with intelligence and patience. Humanity had evolved knowing that the universe was not safe and had built its defenses accordingly. Their ships reflected that mindset, armor layered over structural redundancies. Multiple power systems, each capable of independent operation. Manual overrides for systems that other species trusted entirely to automation. Human engineers believed that failure was inevitable, so they prepared for it and for what came after. As the fleet assembled beyond the orbit of Jupiter, observers across nearby systems began to grasp the scale of what was happening. Hundreds of vessels aligned in silent formation, destroyers bristling with missile arrays, carriers housing atmospheric assault craft, heavy cruisers equipped with close-range engagement tools, something few spacefaring species considered necessary. Because most battles were fought at distance, humans planned for proximity, for chaos, for the moment when things went wrong. The Council demanded clarification. A formal inquiry was sent to Earth. It received a brief reply. Humanity is responding to an extinction event. Nothing more. No request for approval. No coordination proposal. No diplomatic overture. For the first time in modern galactic history, a species had mobilized independently of Council consensus. And the most unsettling part was not the speed. It was the readiness. This was not a civilization scrambling to build a response. This was one opening doors that had always been there, hidden beneath civilian infrastructure, buried within peaceful expansion, prepared quietly, patiently, in the background of a society that publicly championed cooperation. The truth settled heavily across the Council chambers. Humanity had never disarmed. It had only rested. Near Saturn, the flagship of the Terran fleet powered forward. Unlike the others, it bore visible scars, impact marks, reinforced seams, structural adaptations from environments far harsher than vacuum. It was not elegant. It was indomitable. Around it, the fleet adjusted position, forming not a parade formation, but a tactical one. Overlapping fields of defense. Mutual support vectors. Independent operational capability. They were ready to fight alone, or together. A final check confirmed jump readiness. Coordinates locked. Destination, Elandari home system. Before departure, one more message was sent. Not to the Council, not to observers, but to the fading distress signal still echoing through deep space. You are no longer alone. Then space bent. One by one, the ships vanished into controlled distortions of gravity and light. The Terran strategic fleet left Sol without ceremony. No speeches marked their departure. No celebrations followed. Only silence. Because humanity understood something the galaxy was only beginning to learn. Hope was not always gentle. Sometimes, hope arrived armed. The war the Dominion didn't understand. The Velker Dominion did not fear resistance. They had built their empire on overcoming it. For centuries, their strategy had worked with ruthless efficiency. Arrive with overwhelming force, sever communication networks, dismantle defenses, and break the will of a civilization before it could organize. War, to the Dominion, was not chaos. It was a sequence, and sequences could be controlled. The Elandari had followed the pattern perfectly. Their fleets engaged and were destroyed. Their cities resisted and were neutralized. Their orbital defenses collapsed under sustained bombardment. The final phase, planetary pacification, had already begun. Then the human fleet arrived, not in a grand formation, not with ceremonial warnings or demands. They appeared at the edge of the system in scattered emergence points, their jump signatures dispersed across multiple vectors. To the Dominion's tactical processors, it looked like a mistake. Disorganized, fragmented, predictable. They moved to exploit it. Dominion warships advanced in disciplined lines, their targeting systems prioritizing isolated human vessels. Long-range particle lances fired with surgical precision, designed to disable command ships and collapse coordination. The first volley struck true. One human cruiser took a direct hit, its outer armor peeling away under the assault. But it did not explode. It did not retreat. Instead, it kept moving. Human ships did not rely on singular integrity. They relied on layers. Behind the ruined armor lay secondary plating. Behind that, structural reinforcements. Behind those, distributed control systems that rerouted command functions without hesitation. Damage was expected. Survival was designed. As Dominion forces adjusted their targeting priorities, something unexpected happened. The human fleet changed shape. Ships broke formation, not in panic, but with purpose. They moved into the asteroid field surrounding the Elandari system's outer planets. Dominion doctrine discouraged close engagement within debris zones. Collateral risk was high. Targeting solutions degraded. Maneuverability suffered. Humans entered willingly and turned the environment into a weapon. Thrusters fired against massive asteroids, altering trajectories. Tugs attached and released with precise timing. Soon, entire clusters of rock began drifting into Dominion advance paths. Not randomly, deliberately. Dominion ships fired to clear them and revealed their positions. Human vessels struck from concealment. Missiles emerged from behind tumbling debris. Kinetic rounds used gravitational slingshots to accelerate beyond expected velocities. Close-range engagements began, distances so short that Dominion targeting algorithms struggled to compensate. Because Dominion battles were fought at range, human battles adapted to whatever range remained. One Dominion destroyer found itself shadowed by a human frigate that refused to disengage. At knife-fight proximity, its long-range lances were useless. The human vessel deployed something the Dominion had never encountered. Boarding craft. Small, armored pods launched across the void, impacting the destroyer's hull with explosive force. Dominion internal sensors detected breaches. They expected automated sabotage drones. What entered instead were humans. Encased in vacuum assault armor, they moved through the destroyer with terrifying resolve. Radiation leaks did not slow them. Decompression did not stop them. They fought through corridors with a singular objective: disable command and propulsion. The Dominion had never prepared for an enemy that would willingly enter a dying ship. To them, survival meant maintaining distance. To humans, survival meant completing the mission. Within minutes, the destroyer lost maneuvering control. Moments later, it collided with one of its own escorts. Elsewhere, human drone swarms adapted mid-battle. When Dominion jamming disrupted communication, the drones shifted to autonomous hunting patterns. When point defense systems increased fire rates, the drones changed approach vectors. They learned. Dominion commanders began to notice something deeply unsettling. Human tactics were not fixed. They evolved in real time. Every loss was studied, every engagement adjusted, and every success repeated with refinement. For the first time in their expansion history, Dominion advance lines faltered. Then they broke. A human strike group penetrated deep into the siege formation surrounding the Elandari homeworld. At its center loomed a Dominion flagship, massive, heavily shielded, and thought invulnerable. Human ships did not attempt to destroy it from range. They closed in, firing at shield harmonics, mapping weaknesses, drawing defensive fire. Then came the final assault. Multiple boarding waves launched simultaneously. Some were destroyed. Others reached the hull. Inside, Dominion soldiers encountered something beyond their understanding. Humans did not hesitate. They advanced through fire, through collapsing corridors, through sections venting atmosphere into space. Pain did not stop them. Fear did not slow them. Because on Earth, survival had always demanded persistence. The flagship's command core fell within the hour. Moments later, its engines shut down. The siege was broken. Dominion forces withdrew to regroup. For the first time in centuries, they had lost. And as human ships moved to stabilize Elandari orbit, realization spread through Dominion command networks. This was not a species that avoided danger. This was one that moved toward it. The war was no longer predictable, and that made it dangerous. The galaxy changes forever. When the Dominion withdrew from Elandari orbit, they did not do so in chaos. They retreated with discipline, their remaining fleets forming defensive formations as they fell back beyond the system's edge. But the difference was unmistakable. They were leaving. For the first time in living memory, the Velker Dominion had abandoned an active conquest, and they had done so without achieving their objective. Silence followed their departure. Not the empty silence of defeat, but the stunned quiet of survival. The Elandari homeworld still burned. Entire continents were scarred by orbital strikes. Atmospheric storms raged, where energy weapons had torn open the sky. Cities lay shattered, their crystalline towers reduced to jagged remains. but they lived. In an orbit above their wounded world, the human fleet remained. The galaxy watched closely. History suggested what would come next. When powerful species intervened in weaker systems, they imposed control. Protection became oversight. Oversight became authority. Authority became ownership. It was the way of empires. But humanity did not land armies to govern. They sent engineers. Construction vessels descended first, deploying atmospheric stabilizers and shield generators to halt further environmental collapse. Medical ships followed, their bays opening to receive Elandari civilians injured in the bombardment. Orbital platforms began assembling defensive satellites. Not weapons aimed outward, but systems designed to detect and warn. The difference did not go unnoticed. Human soldiers remained present, but not as occupiers. They worked alongside Elandari rescue teams, lifting debris, securing unstable structures, restoring power grids where possible. Their presence was firm but quiet, efficient, not dominant. Within days, communication relays were re-established. Within weeks, atmospheric damage was contained. Within months, reconstruction began. Across the galaxy, the Council observed with growing disbelief. Humanity had revealed a warfleet capable of breaking the Dominion's advance. And yet, they made no territorial claims, issued no demands, requested no tribute. Instead, a single message was transmitted to the Council. Assistance rendered. System stabilization in progress. No celebration followed. No declaration of victory. Only work. The Elandari struggled at first to understand the rescuers. Humans were intense, focused, driven, sometimes unsettling in their resilience. They labored through exhaustion. They entered hazardous zones without hesitation. They repaired infrastructure while Dominion wreckage still drifted in orbit. To the Elandari, survival had always meant endurance through harmony. To humans, survival meant action. Together, they found balance. In time, the first Elandari child returned to a restored habitation dome. Then another. Life resumed, not as it had been, but as it could be again. Beyond the system, the Dominion regrouped. Their analysts studied the battle relentlessly. They had not been defeated in total. Their fleets remained powerful, their empire intact. But something had changed. For the first time, expansion carried risk. Because humanity had demonstrated something the Dominion had never encountered. A species that fought not for conquest, but for others. A transmission arrived at Dominion command space weeks later. Human in origin, unencrypted, direct. We do not seek war, but extinction is unacceptable. No threat followed. None was needed. The meaning was clear. Further aggression would not go unanswered. Across the galaxy, perceptions shifted. Humanity was no longer seen as an isolated Deathworld species, dangerous but distant. There was something new, a force capable of immense violence. That chose restraint, a civilization forged in adversity, that used its strength to protect rather than dominate. Trade routes began to adjust. Diplomatic channels reopened. And where fear of the Dominion had once dictated silence, hope began to take its place. The Elandari, in gratitude, made a quiet change to their star charts. Sol was given a new designation, not as a political title, not as an honorific, but as a remembrance. They named it the Sleeping Giant, because when the galaxy had turned away, an extinction seemed inevitable. One distress call had awakened something ancient, something powerful, something willing to rise not for glory, but for survival shared. And now, every civilization understood a simple truth. If darkness came again, if another voice cried out into the void, humanity would hear it, and humanity would answer.